Welcome to episode 14 of CyberBytes, the podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Cooper, co-founder of Aspiron Search. This week's guest, we have the CEO and co-founder of Dragos, Rob Lee. Having helped Dragos grow significantly over the last 18 months across the US, Europe and the Middle East, I had the chance to sit down with Rob and discuss all things Dragos. Let's dive straight in. First things first, man. How are you?
Yeah, doing very well. Thanks for having me on. How are you doing?
No, really well, thank you. Really well. I'm guessing you're in Maryland at the moment.
Yep, absolutely. Home office, just trying to keep down the fort. Yeah.
Nice, nice. I was over in Hanover in November, so I came in to the Dragos office and
Yeah.
enjoyed the brew or the beer, the in
Yeah.
brewery. I think I had the
Yeah,
pipe
for
dream.
for science and analytics purposes, right? Yeah. So for the audience, we have we have a brewery because a lot of our folks work on industrial control systems, which for the wide audience here is kind of specialized computing systems that operate in kind of physical environments. So water filtration, gas generation, electricity generation, pharmaceutical, basically everything out there, anything that interacts with physics, you're going to be dealing with those control systems. We have a bunch of them. Our engineers and our folks created a brewery, and so we have wonderful beer like TCP IPA, Pipe Dream Sickle, Lager 4J. Yeah, it's just a fun thing to keep
That
things
was
together.
it. The
Yeah,
Lager 4J I think I
yeah.
had. And I think I had two and lucky I was getting a cab home because they were pretty strong. So look, Rob, most of the guests listening to this will know who you are. But just really keen to just run through a quick background of how you first got into security and how you've got to your position of now CEO of Dragos.
Yeah. So I started out in the Air Force, and my background just was really African studies. Like I'm not a techie by trade. I always loved computers and things like that, but in university it was African studies and social sciences. And I like saying that to people because anybody can take any path to get into cybersecurity. The idea that it has to be any one thing has always been pretty ridiculous. And yeah, I joined an organization called Engineers Without Borders while I was doing all that, and did some humanitarian trips to places like Cameroon and building control systems. So building wind filtration, or excuse me, wind generation, water filtration units, things like that. Seeing the power of a simple tiny wind turbine powering a car battery so that a mom could have LEDs at night so her kid could study. Like it was just beautiful.
Mm.
And so when I found out that people were targeting those things, like adversaries, state actors, criminals, whatever, trying to disrupt civilian infrastructure, it just, I mean, come on, like if you want to take my credit card or like spy on personal details of the military, like go for it. But targeting civilian infrastructure, like you're a jerk. And so I really got inspired by that. Joined when I graduated, joined as an officer doing cyber warfare operations, is what they called it, which is a big term for just cybersecurity. And then almost immediately went over to the National Security Agency, built out the mission for the U.S. government, looking at state actors breaking into these industrial control systems, or sometimes we call them operation technology or OT kind of environments. And from there, it was just a career of being able to track the bad guys and stop them from hurting people, which was really cool. And when I got out, I had no desire to build a company. I've just always been teaching over the SANS Institute,
Yep.
and making classes over there. But after the Ukraine 2015 attack, which is the first time a cyber attack took down electric power anywhere in the world, I got called up to investigate the attack. And afterwards, I came back to my now co-founders and said, guys, like nothing that I see on the market, none of the focus that people are putting on enterprise IT is impacting this operations technology stuff. Like we got to do something different. So in 2016, we founded Dragos, which was really focused on being a tech company to go provide a technology to help people identify and understand what's in their environment, but also have really smart folks and services folks and intelligence professionals to help educate and transfer knowledge to people in the community about what OT is and why it's so important. And then lastly, in terms of how did I become the CEO, it's because my two co-founders, one was like, oh yeah, I'm amazing on the data analysis and stuff, I'll be the data scientist. I'm like, cool. The other one was like, yeah, I'm like great developer and stuff, I'll be the chief technology officer. And the two of them are like really making the product at first. And I'm like, well, I think I'm pretty smart. I can code and do all sorts of things now. And I was like, but what else is there? And they're like, I don't know. You just run the company. I'm like, all right, sure, fine. So I basically was not skilled enough to do anything else when we started.
Yeah.
And so that's how I became CEO.
Nice. Where did you start out of? Was it literally like a basement or is it like a back room?
It was, I mean, at our home. So
Yeah.
I had left the military by that point. And yeah, and John and Justin left the NSA. And so while teaching, I was just at my house, doing the work, and they, building control system labs and buying stuff on eBay and the things that I always would do to train myself anyways. A lot of this is self-taught for me
Yeah.
because I talk about being non-technical to start with, but I do instant response and development and all that kind of stuff now, but wasn't formal education. And yeah, it was just, yeah, it was kind of like the basement feel, but it was just at home is where it all started. And then by the end of the year, we took some seed funding to get a little office space and hire the first couple of people. And then as of today, we're over 550 folks. The
Wow.
company's valued at north of 1.7 billion. Got hundreds of customers around the world, offices around the world. Like it's amazing because not only are there a lot of people that join that just really understand and believe in the mission, and so it's a very mission driven focus, but the wider community in the industrial control system world, like they're just such beautiful people. I mean, they're always striving to take care of their communities. Hey, we live and work in the communities we serve, kind of being the mantra. And so I think for a large part of the infrastructure community, they've kind of adopted us in, going, hey, you're not just some normal security vendor that's just trying to sell a product and leave. You actually understand our mission. You want to be a partner on that mission. We see long-term relationships with you. Let's go. And I don't think of Dragos in the way that we built it would have been able to work in another community. Like if we were just doing AppSec or like FinTech or whatever else, I just don't think this would have worked.
Yeah, nice. Because safeguarding civilization, the mission, like that's a bold statement.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, who come up with that? Because it's amazing. But yeah,
Yeah, just in the early days, it just kind of felt right. It's like, what are you doing? And a lot of these companies have great taglines and stuff, but taglines are meh. Missions you can align around, right? And some of these companies have good ones, but it was always like CrowdStrike had a good one, like stop breaches. Like that's what they're there for. That's cool, And so like there was all these things, and it was like, well, what are you doing? Like, oh, we're bringing visibility. Are we doing this? And it's like, no, honestly, like there are people out there that are not trying to steal data, but they're trying to kill people, and we're trying to keep the critical part of critical infrastructure and the underpinnings of all of civilization running. So yeah, we're going to safeguard civilization, and I think that can come off very arrogant at first when you look at it, like, oh, okay. But what that also means to us is it's not just about the big companies. We're going to make our money, the company's valuation, all that on the larger companies and the people that have money to spend. But civilization is not just the big companies. And, if you want to, I live in Maryland now, but I'm from Alabama. And if you want to go talk to my mom and dad in Alabama, it's Coleman Cooperative Power Company that's delivering their electricity, not Southern Company, no matter how cool and amazing Southern Company is. So to have a solution only for the big players is not safeguarding civilization. So it's kind of also a reminder to us of what are we doing to give back? How are we making the community better? How are we training people? How are we providing resources at zero cost for folks that can't afford it? Like there's a certain aspect to that statement as almost a reminder of really what we're here for.
Yeah, nice. So let's talk about hiring straight away, because I know that Dragos, you've got an amazing culture, great mission, great values, great people. Obviously, it was just three of you to start with. That journey getting to 550 now hasn't obviously been easy. There will be hiccups, challenges, hurdles, success, some not so great hires. First things first, let's talk about the four tenants, because I know you spoke about them, but can you just let the guys know what they are specifically?
Yeah, you're always going to have different cultures form in your company. Not only as people come in, but it should happen. Like the sales team in the East might be a different culture than the sales team in the West or the sales team in Australia. The sales team might have a different culture than the services team or the engineering team. Those things are okay and should be fostered. But you want to have core components of any of the cultures that form. And the core components for us are four tenets. And I always despised in the military, there was like these like paragraph long like things about what you value, and no one would remember them.
Yeah.
And so I was like, look, let's just keep it simple, four things. And Ben Miller, our first employee, was really instrumental like putting these together. And it really came down to transparency is number one. Like, hey, we're going down a difficult path. You're asking people to be on board that Maybe they feel there's larger, more stable companies, and you're asking customers to like believe in you and buy into you, especially early days. And as you grow, like people always feel disconnected. So like, what's one of the really important things? Transparency. Hey, I'll show you my full hand. I'll tell you why we're making decisions. You may not agree with every decision I make, but you're a shareholder in this company or a customer that's along the journey. You'll understand why we're making those decisions. And so let's just be fully transparent to the place that I'll brief board discussions and revenue targets and everything company wide. Just your shareholders, whatever you want to know, ask, and it's yours. The second one is candid, candidacy. So just be extremely candid. You can't be a jerk, but let's not pull punches.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll get in a meeting, especially if you're a big company, 15 people in the room, and everyone leaves the room going, that was a bad idea, but nobody said anything. And the same idea, when we're dealing with critical infrastructure security, we're dealing with state actors trying to kill people. Cut the crap. Like just cut through all the hype, cut through all the crap, cut through all the pleasantries. Oh, that was really well stated, but what I think just say, hey man, I don't actually think the idea works because of this, that, and the other. Just get to it. We got things to do. So let's just be candid with each other. I always hate when people are like, well, if I'm being honest, well, hopefully you're always honest, but just be candid. And then after that, there's the tenet of respect, because you still need to be respectful in all these situations to everybody, not just internal to the company, but external. And we demand it from our customers. We fired 2 customers over the years who were not being respectful to our employees. And we're like, I don't really care how big and important you are. You're not going to talk to our employees like that. They demand respect. You demand respect. Why don't you go pick someone else?
Love that.
And then the last one would be assume no malicious intent, because especially we've always been remote work culture even before the pandemic, and you knew that just like things come up in miscommunication, and people start to think, oh well, maybe they meant this. Well, maybe if they meant that, then maybe they think I'm an idiot and whatever. It's like, dude, assume no malicious intent. If you got a question, go back to the candid aspect, ask for a transparent answer, and be respectful about what you hear. And so they all kind of work together to just make sure that communication works really well, and that we're all aligned on what we're trying to do and very clear about what that is.
Yeah, nice. I think the one for me is that transparency one, because am I right in saying that every month you hold like Ask Me Anything, literally, where anyone can come to you? And I dread to think some of the things that people have asked.
Yeah.
Must be
it's funny though, because so we have a monthly all staff meeting where all the execs brief to all the company about all the things they're working on, what's going on. I brief as well, and then they can kind of ask me and the execs anything they want every month. Anybody can ask anything they want of me, whatever, anytime in Slack. And then I also do 2 town halls with every team every year, and so I don't know, 30 or 40 of those across the company. And so there's always this aspect of, I tell people, you don't have to interact with me to be successful at the company, or anybody for that matter that's in the exec team. You don't have to if it makes you feel uncomfortable. You don't have to ask me questions. But if you leave Dragos and you're like, oh yeah, well, they were busy and I couldn't ask, or oh, I had questions, no, everybody's going to know that that's on you. So, and the other thing that I think is interesting is for the newer employees, there's almost like a detox that has to happen from their like last employers. I constantly get people coming up to me being like, this is the best company I've ever worked at. This is amazing here, and I was like, okay, cool, but why? And I dig into it. I'm like, man, I appreciate you like this company, but we're not the best. You just were abused in your last job. You should not have put up with what you put up with. And so I always tell people, like, leave your baggage, like leave your ex's baggage with your ex. Like, let's start over. Because I still get people like, wow, am I allowed to ask you a question? I'm like, why wouldn't you be? Like, what are you doing? And so there's kind of a detox phase, but then once people get into it, the questions are amazing and they reveal really good insights. And just by the type of questions that get asked, I get a better understanding about what's not being communicated, what's not being clear, the up and down communication and things. So while a lot of people see me out in the community at conferences and at client sites and doing that kind of stuff, or even teaching, most of my time in Dragos is around the culture, the go-to-market, and kind of saying no to things like let's go do this. And I'm like, oh, that's a bad idea. Like, hold on. Well, you know what really works? Zero trust in AI. Is there anything we can put in our product that's zero trust in AI for marketing? Like, no, we're not doing that. Stop. It's a fun place to be.
No, quality. And I know that from day one, since we've worked with you, you've always put salaries on your job specs, which I know I'm seeing more of now, but it seems like from day one, you've always done that, even like the equity component. Like, what drove that decision? It's law in some states now. I think New York has now adopted it.
Yeah. So 7 years ago, when we started doing some of the things we're doing now, and I always hate when people are like, I created that. Like, who cares? But I gotta tell you, like, there's some things that we're doing now that I couldn't find a single company doing 7 years ago, and now it's moving into law. Now you're moving to other, companies are doing it. Simple example, as a security analyst, because my time in the NSA was not just in leadership, was doing threat analysis and kind of security operations in a way and incident response. And I would always go want to download some cool companies. Dell came out with something, or McAfee came out with something, and I want to go download the research. It was like, put in your contact details. I'm like, no, I'm giving you my time to read the report. Yeah, I'm interested in what it is, but like, if I like something, I'll come talk to you, which is what you want. Why do I also have to give the contact details to be harassed 16 times by somebody? I was like, this is stupid. So at Dragos, there was a lot of the original stuff was a lot of like things I thought were annoying, and as an analyst, and I just asked, is there a reason we're doing this? And if the reason ultimately was anecdotal, there was nothing to prove or disprove that it was ever valuable. Like, oh, well, the contact details that come in, it's actually good for us. Well, have you tried the other way? Like, do you know if the opportunities close at the same rate? Do you actually know if you build the same pipeline? Things like that. Oh, well, no, we don't. But this is how it's always been done. Anything that goes that lane, I'm like, immediately kill it.
Yeah.
And so we made it where, hey, you can download whatever you want. Don't put in your contact details if you don't want. If you want to, feel free. So on that as an example, what's happened is my marketing team in the beginning were like, this is crazy. And then later they're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Because what was happening was they didn't have to run down people that didn't want to talk to them. And the people that wanted to talk to them now were focused. And so they were really able to deliver value with them. And our research and our insights got out into a wider area in the community to go open up other discussions where people who didn't even originally download the report were calling us. Take that to the hiring thing. The recruiters at first violently against this. Rob, we're going to put a salary up there, and what's going to happen is other companies are going to look at what we're paying and come and just pay a little bit more and try to poach our employees. And I was like, cool. They're like, what? I'm like, that's cool. Like, if our employees join Dragos and as a result they get better opportunities elsewhere and they want to leave, like, that's good for them. That's our commitment to them. As long as they came in and did things the right way, we should be happy they're alumni. It was like, well, we won't get as many people applying because they'll kind of qualify them out on the salary without really understanding the equity and the benefits and all that comes with it. I'm like, well, yeah, but if somebody's uncomfortable with the salary, you can talk them into the job with all the other things, but they're going to come back on that salary eventually, and it's going to cause issues because they were uncomfortable with it at the start and they almost got talked into the job. I was like, just put it up there and try it. Recruiters had the same thing. Oh my God, the people that want to talk to us are higher quality. They're more bought into the culture and what we're doing. They understand Dragos, not just the salary. It was kind of all those things. And we ended up getting more people apply who you never want to guess, play the games on it. But one of the big reasons we did it, honestly, was just the diversity aspect of people. Like, it always causes issues. You have the same position, you're doing the same work, but your coworker is getting paid more than you. And then there could be some reason. Maybe they were working on a special project, or maybe they had some better skills that we're trying to keep hold of. Who knows? But it always opens the questions of, but I don't know what that is. Now it's not transparent to me. And that's one of our tenets. And then yet, why are they getting paid? Oh, it's this sex or ethnicity or religion or whatever else. And sometimes those things are. And it was just like, dude, I'm not doing that. You know what? If you're at Dragos and you're working in that position, you're a level 5 security operations analyst, regardless in the company, all level 5s, you get paid this amount. We're good to go. And it has taken away a lot of the questions and abuses that are otherwise just not important as you try to run the company. Like, they're important to address, but you don't want to have to deal with that crap when you're trying to grow a company. So just do the things that make people safer and more appreciated and valued from the start, and let's get focused on the mission.
Yeah, and that's global as well. So we've helped you scale in like Dubai, UK.
Yeah, we don't, and that's the other thing, is we don't take advantage of under sort of served markets. So like, we benchmark on what we pay where everybody globally gets the same compensation. Now, it may not be the same salary, because in Saudi Arabia, as an example, there's you need childcare benefits, you need schooling benefits, you need, sometimes it's like in Germany, you need a car. And so I'm not going to pay an analyst, 120 in the US and then 120 in Saudi Arabia, and then a bunch of extra things, because now it's not actually equal.
Yeah.
but it's the same compensation overall.
Yeah.
And what generally happens with companies, especially tech companies, they outsource stuff and try to go to like markets where they can get away with cheaper labor.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It just feels exploitative to me. And so we were like, dude, here's where we benchmark. We benchmark at the above average in the market on salary, usually 50th to 75th percentile, and 95 percentile and above, like best in class on equity. Here's what we're offering. We benchmarked it in the US market, which is going to carry you everywhere in the world. So here's your total compensation. Let me know. And I think it's made things simpler, but you still have to push back. Every now and then, one of my execs will come and go, "Oh, but this person, they want 10% more or whatever it is, but they're a real rock star." And I'm like, that's how it starts, guys. The answer is no. Like, and okay, well, maybe we'll instead of an L5, we'll call it an L6. Well, then go re-advertise it. What? You had people interview for L5, you found your rock star. If you just make it an L6, you would have been evaluating different people. If that person wants to apply for an L6 position, kill the L5 position, go have a level 6 position, see the full recruitment pool, give everyone a fair shot. Then if you want that person, hire them at that level. That's so there's a lot of, I think sometimes the execs at first feel like we're slowing them down in the ways we do things. But then over time, they see what it does for their team and the culture and everything else. And it's like, okay, I get it. All right, this is good. Because you're essentially deprogramming for some people like 15, 20, 30 years of the business world into completely different ways of doing certain things.
Yeah, nice. So you was at the Senate a couple of weeks ago now. Mm-hmm. I listened to that hearing and it said that there were 700,000 unfilled OT positions. How can we fill that gap? Like, that's a lot of positions. Like, what in your take, like, what can be done about that?
Yeah, so they're definitely talking on the cybersecurity positions overall. And I think there's a couple things. Number one for me is, instead of, well, how do I get more people in there? Like, first validate, like, are there actually 700,000? Like, let's look at that. And there are, but the first problem, in my opinion, is the HR systems. The job descriptions, the jobs themselves are not fillable. So there are definitely unfilled jobs. Come on into the cybersecurity community. We're hiring. Things are good. But it's not 700,000. There will be, or I should say, maybe there are, but they're not fillable. There'll be positions like, hey, I want an entry-level, brand new position, and I need you to have a CSSP and a SAN certification and 3 years of experience. What? Yeah. How is that a brand new position? And those two certs together probably cost somebody $10,000 to get. So that doesn't make any sense. Or it'll be, hey, I need somebody that's got 10 years of experience in this technology that's 7 years old.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. Or, oh, I want a principal incident responder who's led multiple incident response engagements before, and I want him for $45,000. Sorry, dude, you're not getting it. So the number one, if you took and actually changed the job applications and the job descriptions and had reasonable requirements, you'd fill most. I'd bet you'd fill half of them overnight. Like, you'd find the talent. Because as I teach still, I get the hardest question I get is from new people on, how do I get in the field? It's never like, how do I get my next job? Like, people can figure that out. Once you're in the field, you're good. Breaking into the field is hard for people. So that's an indication of, like, the job description is similar. Outside of that, there's so much out there in terms of, like, free resources and everything else. People are scrappy and hungry, and they're doing it. There's free classes online, all that. Like, I always get these pitches on, here's how we're going to solve the job gap. We're going to create a new training university that's available, and then employers will pay, and we'll do this. And it's like, guys, that we've got 30 of those. That's not the issue. So doing those are good. I don't know that we need more. Probably what would be really cool is governments around the world constantly needing more cybersecurity talent. They could take a program and say, look, we're going to bring in genuinely new people. All right. Not just senior people and try to poach and do things like every company does. We're going to bring in genuinely new people, while we have some seniors, of course. And you join, we're going to pay you well. We're going to train you up. You're gonna get maybe like a SANS class every year with a certification that's going to make you marketable, as well as having good skills. And you have to work here for 4 years as a result. So like a contract on what we're going to invest in you from the government. And then after that, flood them into the private sector as they leave. And I've talked to governments around the world, and the question is always the same. Well, but we want to keep those people. How do we keep them? It's like, okay, but you should be comfortable with training them and leaving. But if we do train them up, make them really marketable to leave, it's like, guys, I think this is part of your responsibility as governments. So change the actual system itself on the hiring process, and especially around the job descriptions and what our expectations are. especially with paying reasonable salaries, not top end, but like reasonable. You got to be able to live comfortably. And then don't just reinvest in the programs that haven't worked for 15 years. Let's look at like new ideas, especially like government stepping in to provide skills and training that they can then flood the private sector with people have that skills.
How does Dragos like train and retain, I guess, your staff? Like,
Yeah, I think mission has a lot to do with it, but because we're transparent, nobody really questions like what we're doing with salaries and so forth. So we pay people really well, and we really do well in equity. But then we have things like boxcar programs. So you're always getting more equity.
yeah,
And then we have real transparent conversations with your supervisor about what's my career, progression, and those salaries for your entire career ladder are public, like they're transparent. So if I'm an L2, if I'm a level 2, I can see what the level 9 is making and all the way between. So I can have a conversation with myself of, if I got promoted in these places at these times, would I be comfortable? And so they can kind of plan out their career to some level, while knowing they're always getting more equity, while knowing they're working on really cool things, while not getting bogged down with the bureaucracy and crap, so they can actually focus on the mission and actually do what they want to be able to do. Put all those things together, we have an extremely high retention rate, like really, really high. And then it's more of a question of, cool, if it's not working for you, how do we get you out of here in a reasonable way that also benefits the company, benefits you? And so there's always just like a lot of personnel management on that. But I think the transparency in the mission and kind of being allowing people to actually do the job they want to do, that matters a lot.
Particularly for you, Dragos being a high growth business. Why would somebody think about a career in a product company, like rather than going to one of the OEMs or asset owners, something like that?
I think at the point we are now, there's not the question. We haven't gotten the question for years on, are you guys stable? Like you're a startup, whatever. Because like we've raised so much capital and everything, it's pretty obvious we're fine. But also in these macroeconomic conditions, as an example, even Meta and Apple and Microsoft, everyone's doing layoffs. We didn't. Like we're taking care of our employees, and we're refocusing where we put efforts and stuff to not punish our employees for market conditions. And so, hell, we're one of the most stable companies on the planet as a result, which definitely helps attract and recruit people. But when they're working at like coming to a product company versus like an OEM or others, or original equipment manufacturer and others, there's really important jobs and work to be done at all these companies. Don't get me wrong. But we have a really singular mission. A lot of companies, it's, hey, we want to do all these different things, and this business unit focuses on this, and this business unit is focused on this, and this product line is this, and here's what we're going to do with this. And so there's not really like a unified thing. For us, it's, we are here because of the Dragos platform technology. All of the other stuff that we do supports that, and here's how and why. And we are doing that because that whole safeguarding civilization mission, which translates into, here's how we take care of people, here's exactly what we do, here's how it's meaningful to the community. So it's a pretty straightforward proposition, which I think is very attractive to a lot of people. And working a company that can take knowledge from people and codify it into software to make it scalable, so that everyone from a giant chemical company to a small water distribution company can actually create a security program. Like you really feel like you're making a difference.
Absolutely. Particularly for you, and will be a direct question for you. How do you stop, or how are you stopping yourself from burning out? Because I see on LinkedIn, you're at every conference under the sun, you're at a panel every other day, doing a podcast, something like that.
Yeah.
How are you coping?
Yeah, I definitely tell people not to copy me, because it's not like the path to success. I think I'm just kind of like ADD and like eccentric about certain things. And so I enjoy it. And don't get me wrong, it's taxing at times. But like, I also feel sometimes not guilt, but like, how can you say no? Of like, I've been ringing this bell on industrial security for years, and like what we need to do. And it's like, it's working and it's catching on, and everything from Congress to Parliament to everyone's taking it seriously, and it's impacting lives. I want my son to grow up in a safe world. And so how could I say no when somebody's like excited about the topic and wants me to come talk to them or whatever, right? So there's part of that. But I do set barriers, and I do pay attention to my mental health and just try to be smart about it. So as an example, last year and again this year, I've said, hey, if you expect me to come speak at your company, come speak at your conference, whatever, tell me in the first quarter. And then my entire 2023 calendar filled up. To the point now that I already went out on LinkedIn and said, hey, if you expect me to be there in 2024, tell me now. And so it's very rare that I accept kind of hey, in a month we're doing, no, And I love you and I love what you're doing. But no, my requirements are you tell me 6 to 12 months in advance so I can plan out, talk to my family, communicate clearly, understand, take a look back at the calendar and go, this is too much already. I can't take anymore, or this is good. But yeah, it's definitely like I don't like when people think you need to work 15 to 18 hours a day to get ahead. I just do that because I enjoy it and I enjoy what I'm doing. But jobs are jobs. Like you shouldn't have this expectation that you need to do extra for your job. I don't know where that started, but there's a balance. Like you should be able to do 9 to 5 jobs, leave work, never think about it again, and be fine. That being said, it is a job to then go invest in yourself. You got to invest in yourself if you want to go faster or do more. I'm not saying to that company, but you got to do something. And so I was always constantly investing in myself. So I don't agree with the check out at 5 o'clock, watch Netflix all night, or do whatever, and I should be able to be running a company. No, that's not okay either. Like you set reasonable expectations. You should be able to protect yourself. 9 to 5, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you also want to go from a senior position to like be the leader in the field, not even like principal, but you really want to go out there and like break the glass ceiling, then yeah, you got to go invest in yourself and do something too. Like, so don't let companies be abusive, but don't think that you can maintain and get ahead. Maintenance is good. There's nothing wrong with maintenance. But if you really have a drive to get ahead, then of course you're going to have to do something to change the status quo.
Nice, nice. What's the DISC conference? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So when we started the company, there was two kind of things that I noticed in the community that always bothered me. Number one, everything was very anecdotal. It was, we should do cybersecurity and OT because of this. Where's the data? Oh, well, I've been doing this for 15 years, or I heard there was a cyber attack over here. Is there any evidence to improve? Well, I know a guy who knows a guy. It was all that crap. And so I wanted to bring things to light. Let's just, I mean, I like intel, like ground truth reality. Drag it in the light. If there's a problem, let's fix it. If there's not, we got other stuff to work on. Let's not hype this up. At the same time, we had a lot of people that were keynoting conferences and out and speaking in the community and all the circuits. But then they came to work for Dragos, and a conference is not going to put 5 people from the same company on their agenda. So I had main stage speakers that were getting sidelined because they already had 4 or 5 people from Dragos speaking there. So we created DISC, the Dragos Industrial Security Conference. And it was all about, it's just going to be the Dragos speakers to give them an opportunity to speak. It's all going to be cutting edge research and insights and lessons from the field and new vulnerabilities and threats and instant response cases. No product pitches, no layering in Dragos stuff to try to sell to you. And I am not going to invite everybody because normally asset owners and operators, when you deal in critical infrastructure, you'll find that 60, 70, sometimes 80% of the conference is vendors and consultants, and 20% of the people that are actually doing the real work. And they don't feel comfortable talking because now it's going to go out, whether it's journalists or vendors talking about it, whatever. And these are sensitive topics. So we said, cool. DISC is our speakers, our research, no product pitches. It's free. Only asset owners and operators can come, or like super trusted partners of ours. Journalists can't attend. It's not recorded. It's not broadcast anywhere. Let's talk about what's really going on. And it has been extremely popular. And we've gotten, I think last year was like 600 or 700 people there. And at most conferences you might have 500, 600, 700. I know conferences that have like 1,000, 2,000, 1,200 people in the industrial community, but 70 or 80% are consultants and vendors. And at our conference, it's like 80, 90% asset owners and operators. And so it's not that it's better, it's just different. So we just saw something that wasn't getting done and we created a place for it. And instead of turning it into a sales or marketing event, we just want to talk about our research. It leads to sales. Don't get me wrong. People trust us and so they want to come partner with us. But it's just, hey, we'll just share our knowledge. And if you like what we share or you trust in us, you're probably going to partner with us eventually.
Nice. And it's on the same day every year, is that right?
Every year, yeah. So November 5th every year in Maryland. And then we have one later in November in Australia now because there's enough research there. Within the next year or two, there'll be enough of our teams doing research in Europe to put one there. November 5th for the main one in Maryland. Because a lot of times I was always, when's RSA, when's the SANS conference, when's this, and the planning sucks.
Yeah.
And if you're an asset owner and operator, especially in certain communities like electric, you got to plan out your budget like the beginning of the year. And so to be able to say, hey, November 5th every year, Dragos conference, come if you want, and it's free. It's made it, I think, a lot more accessible for people.
Nice. On the research front, how many adversaries or how many things are you tracking nowadays?
Yeah, when I started, people didn't want to believe that there were industrial specific threat groups. When we started Dragos, and I went and testified the first time in front of the Senate a couple of years after we started was 2018. There were 5, and then this last time I testified at the Senate, updated, and there's about 22 now. And so the threat landscape is growing. But what I will highlight for people is it's not just, oh my gosh, look at how much it's growing. That's true, but some of it's just we're getting better visibility. Like if you have a power company's networks or a manufacturing company's networks or a data center that's not getting monitored, nobody's looking inside the house, the lights are off, you shouldn't be surprised you don't see burglars. So as we deploy our technology, as people around the community are building in visibility into these industrial networks to be able to detect threats and things like that, we're turning on the lights and we're seeing more. So there are both new groups forming and more adversaries coming, as well as we're starting to find folks that have been there for a while. And the trend is not ideal. And the trend is where these adversaries understand what OT is, how to target it uniquely, and how to start scaling their efforts. And when you're talking about the critical part of critical infrastructure, lights, water, power, manufactured goods, pharmaceuticals, everything for all that we live on, it's going to be lower frequency than the attacks that happen in IT, but it's way higher impact. And we got to do something, especially for our communities.
Yeah. Rob, wrapping this up, my man, how do you sleep at night knowing that there's that many?
I'll give you the insight to how arrogant I am and how I sleep. I don't generally think I'm very arrogant. This one, I know I'm pretty arrogant on. Everyone always talks about how the adversaries are winning. And, the adversary just has to get one thing right and defenders had to protect everything. I've been on the offense against other countries too. That's crap. Offense has to get everything right or you get caught on anything and you can blow the entire operation and every other operation you do in other companies. So that's all crap. But how I really sleep, I think about the Russian intelligence services. I think about the Russian military. I think about the Chinese military, Chinese intelligence service, Iranian, everything. I think about ours because our mission is not to pick sides. Our mission is if it's civilian infrastructure, it's off limits. So I think about all these countries and all these state actors. And I figure there's billions of dollars a year that go into all these different cyber programs. And a lot of it gets focused on industrial infrastructure. So you're talking billions a year. Across the course of our 7-year existence, we've raised about $450 million in capital across that 7-year period, coming up on 8 years now. So 450 across 7 and with 500 people versus billions every year with tens of thousands of people. And we're winning. Like everywhere we go, like there's plenty of adversaries that we kick out. There's plenty of stuff that doesn't make the news because we detect them and say, get out of my house. I'd be embarrassed if I was the adversaries. So no, I'm sleeping pretty good.
Love that, mate. Rob, thanks for coming on, mate. Really appreciate your time. And that's going to go down a treat, that episode.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.